What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Kevin Jackwitz. This is the Kaged Review, and this is my review, finishing up the Spider-Man series with the Amazing Spider-Man 2. What was supposed to be a trilogy, and an obvious trilogy, because this movie does so much to set up the Sinister Six. But I think the hate for the first two Spider-Man movies just kind of blocked out the third one, man. I said in the first movie that there were some big issues with character development, making people care about the characters, especially Gwen Stacy and Kirk Connors, who was the main villain as the Reptile. And you kind of have the same issue with the second movie. You have this one also directed by Mark Webb, and you have Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker Spider-Man, Sally Field as Aunt May Parker, Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, Jamie Foxx comes in as Max Dillon or Electro, Dane DeHaan as Harry Osborn, who winds up turning into a version of the Goblin, and I really want to think that this was supposed to be their version of the Hobgoblin, because if not, it just didn't work out. Paul Giamatti plays Alexei Sistovich, Rhino, and dear God, that was just bad. Paul Giamatti, I like in a lot of things. This was not one of them. He was this really over-the-top, just generic character that eventually became the Rhino in like the last 5 minutes of the movie. It just did not make sense to me at all. Then you have Campbell Scott, Richard Parker, M. Beth Davids as Mary Parker, Chris Cooper does show up as Norman Osborn, and then you have Dennis Leary doing a couple of cameos as Dennis Leary's Captain Stacy. Yeah, as Dennis Leary's Captain Stacy. Just go with it. So this movie, Peter Parker is now pretty confident with his abilities. He's very used to things. He had told Gwen Stacy at the end of the last movie he couldn't date her, but at the beginning of this movie they are dating, but then very quickly he says he can't date her anymore because of the promise he had to make to her father, and he doesn't want to put her in danger. So a lot, and I mean a lot, of this movie focuses on the back and forth will they won't they between Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, and Gwen Stacy kind of not being able to deal with it but still caring about Peter Parker and eventually wanting to go back to him and letting it be her choice what happens, and then Peter Parker's conflict with wanting to protect her but also wanting to be with her. And I would say probably a good 60% of this movie is that. And they were trying to set up the big reaction at the end. They were trying to set up this big emotional payoff by having all this interaction with Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, but they kind of lost me in a couple places because it just kept going. And they did have some cute moments together, Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, and I think that Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield had great chemistry on screen together. I believe they were dating at the time or had just finished dating or whatever. And it really shone through on screen. So that was fine. In the midst of all this, you start out with this big chase scene with Paul Giamatti as the Rhino character, and he puts him in jail. And during this whole scene, there is this guy with some blueprints. This is Jamie Foxx's character on the road that almost gets hit. Spider-Man saves him. He kind of gets this obsession with Spider-Man, and he works at this power plant type place. And so there is an accident where he falls into this tank of electric eels after being electrocuted, and somehow it creates Electro. And so through his fascination developed with Spider-Man, he's kind of just learning about his powers, is this Max Dillon character. And he goes into Times Square where there's a bunch of electricity, and he's like shooting electricity everywhere. And he's not really intentionally doing it, but still causing harm. And so Spider-Man comes in and tries to help him and save him, and kind of takes the spotlight off of Max because they were showing his face on everything in Times Square, all the video monitors and stuff. And then Max like suddenly has this turnabout thing where he's like, Spider-Man's taking his spotlight, and now he's angry at Spider-Man. And so there was a really great scene there where you get the first taste of how powerful Electro really is. And I really liked it. I thought it was cool as hell. It winds up with Spider-Man dousing him with water, kind of taking his power away. They put him in this prison. They do some testing on him. At the same time all this is happening, you have Harry Osborn, who is seeing his father, Norman Osborn, who has this genetic disease that is killing him. And Harry Osborn finds out that he has it too, and he's getting it much earlier, and it's moving much faster with Harry. And so he believes that the genetic testing is going to help him cure this disease, and so he wants Spider-Man's blood in order to, help him out. And so what eventually happens is he goes down, since, he was the head of Oscorp for a while. He goes down to Electro after the panel fires him, basically. And so he tells Electro to help him out, get his company back, and make Spider-Man bleed, and he can have his revenge on Spider-Man. All that good stuff. So you have this big final conflict between Electro and Spider-Man at this power grid. And some things were really cool about this. Some things were pretty cheesy about this. Playing a song on the pipes as Electro kind of charges himself and shoots a power blast out at Spider-Man. It was done a little bit cheesy, to be honest. But there were some very cool effects there. At the end of the day, Gwen Stacy comes up with a way to overcharge Electro and basically make him explode. And so that happens, and then out comes Harry, who found out there was extra venom from these mutated spiders that Oscorp made. So he uses that, and it changes his body structure completely. He's all kind of deformed and really creepy looking. Gets on a glider and goes after Spider-Man. So immediately after they take out Electro, here comes what I'm assuming is the Hobgoblin, because he looked ridiculous. And instead of going directly after Peter Parker, he grabs Gwen Stacy, takes her way up in the sky, and then drops her through this really tall building. It's like a clock tower again. And so there's this fight between Spider-Man and Harry, where eventually Spider-Man knocks out Harry by, kind of wrapping some webbing around his neck and tying it to these gears in this clock tower. Well, the gears break. Gwen Stacy falls. Spider-Man does his best to catch her. He catches her with his web, and she doesn't hit the floor completely, but it was enough for her to smack her head against the floor, and it kills her. And so that was like the big payoff moment that you were supposed to have here. And I mean, the moment itself was done well. I think Andrew Garfield is a really good actor, so he sold his emotions on it extremely well. It just, everything leading up to it didn't necessarily work out for me the way I think it should, which is unfortunate because they could have been onto something here. They were doing a walkthrough with this guy who was setting up something. And we know it as the Sinister Six because you've got Electro there, unfortunately, who died. But then you see Doc Ock's arms, you see the Vulture's wings, and then you're introduced to Rhino. So there was a lot that they could have done with the next movie had it happened. Had the first two movies been made better. I will stand by, I really like Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker. I really did. I thought he was a better Peter Parker than the original. And I honestly feel like they've gotten better with Peter Parker every iteration. The Sam Raimi series was what it was. I liked Andrew Garfield better than that. And I like Tom Hardy better than Garfield. So I think they've honestly gotten better with their selection for playing Peter Parker every time. So I'm not taking anything away from Garfield or Emma Stone for that matter. I think she's a really good actress. But the direction these movies took and how choppy they were, just didn't work for me altogether. So I'm going to give this about the same grade I gave the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, which was like a 6.5. And I think that's about fair. It had some good moments. It had a couple of Electro moments that really wowed me. Like, really were exciting to see. But then you had the rest of the movie to contend with, and so that's kind of how I feel like things went. So ladies and gentlemen, 6.5 out of 10, that's where I'm at. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. My name is Kevin Jackowitz, Kaged Nation, out.